Hey guys, it's Shannon, and I have another guest. I got Kate Gilbert here with me today, and we are going to talk about entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur, and a solopreneur and a small business owner. Kate has a lovely background in a variety of different things, including 10 years of running an online digital magazine in the crafting niche and or niche, however you want to pronounce it. And now she helps entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small business owners in the food and crafting issues specifically, but also for those of us who just love her. Um, do more stuff with make less and in less time with less stress. And she has a nifty system, if I can have a better word, for those of us who are highly introverted and don't like social media and kind of get all wrapped up in what do I want to post and those types of things. So we're going to cover kind of a gamut. And Kate kind of saved me today with this massive little tidbit. So I will talk about that a little bit too. So Kate, thank you for joining me. I'm
Thanks
so
so
glad you're
much for
here.
having me.
So let's talk a little bit about your background because you have done when I met you, we met in Tracy Phillips's live video launch pad. I don't even know if she still runs that, but it was a 10
Oh,
day 10-day thing where we could get comfortable doing live video. And we met there and a couple years ago. And you were doing baking videos at the time.
yeah. At the time, I was running online baking classes. I did them live and I also did recorded classes. I still have one recorded class that I can sell if anybody wants to learn how to make a bûche de Noël. So
I gotta know what that is first.
it's a cake that is served at Christmas in France. It looks like a log and I make a good one. So
I bet.
yeah, so I was doing live classes like on Zoom. People would have me, it was during the pandemic, so like people would have me
Mhm.
come in online and like bring together their family who were all over the place, or their coworkers, or like I did a kid's birthday party. Yeah, I was doing that mostly. So
Cool. But before that, you have this background in food and baking,
yeah.
but you also do other food related, like I know you create content for food related business
Yeah,
owners,
I do a little of
small
that.
businesses.
Yeah, I work for a spice mill company and I sometimes make recipes for them. And then I make the videos that go with those recipes. I'm really a self-taught food person. It's just like I love food and I've always loved baking. So I
Mhm.
just kind of ended up in that world. And um, yeah, but before that, I was in the knitting world. I was running a knitting magazine.
Yeah. And designing patterns, designing knitting
Yeah,
patterns
that's
as
how I
well.
got into that actually. Yeah.
So,
I founded the knitting magazine because I wanted a place where pattern designers could publish and be paid fairly, because that was a big problem in the industry. And so I launched my magazine in 2008. Um, and then it kind of turned to the industry on its head a little bit, like in all the other magazines had to start being more generous with designers because I was really giving people the best deal. So yeah, that was good.
yeah, yeah. So you ran the magazine for 10 years, the online knitting magazine for 10 years,
Mhm.
which, you know, I didn't even realize it was 2008, which is the same year that I started my first monetized blog.
Mhm.
I had blogs since 2004, but I had a site, multiple sites in 2008. So that was kind of a year to start things. I think that kind
Yeah.
of was a heyday of the season to start things. You could really do something online. You could do something for really for the first time. Anybody could if they could figure out the tech and produce content
Yeah.
and share a message and make a difference in their world
Hmm.
in a way that couldn't be done without a massive investment or skills or technology previously. So, but there's a significant amount of skills as anybody who runs an online presence knows, there's a significant amount of skills that go into running or having an online business, or even doing online marketing for your brick and mortar. Um, there's um, there's just a lot. And small business owners and small solopreneurs, we're doing a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of balls.
There's a lot of balls and a lot of plate spinning and a lot of jumping
Yes,
through flaming hoops while you're spinning plates and juggling balls. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I literally have a mark on my calendar for certain days that says spin plates. I mean, that's actually a calendar entry on my calendar.
Nice.
Spin plates, and that's for the nonprofit I work with. It's like make sure things are moving and happening. But there's just all these things, so it gets overwhelming.
Hmm.
It gets overwhelming when you want to then have to go learn how to market your business online, or how do I like do social media when I don't have any time, and how do I
Yeah.
like figure out my branding for online and all the assets that I need, and how do I communicate my message visually when I just want to talk to people. There's all this stuff. And you know that's something that you have transitioned to helping entrepreneurs with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say that I now provide the services that I wish I had had when I was running the magazine. I mean, I did have people who helped me out, and I don't want to make it sound like I was the only person there. And I had a very good friend of mine who um like would meet me like once a week just to kind of like talk things out a bit because I needed that. I needed to do that verbal processing. And so
Hmm.
now that's what I do for a lot of people is somebody says to me, I think I need a whole new website. And I'm like, why do you think that? And I'm not disagreeing
Just like,
necessarily, I'm just asking questions. And then they're like, well, because I don't know, because I'm not selling enough stuff. And then I'm actually thinking about a person in particular who said this to me, and we went and looked at the site, and I said, what are you actually selling? Like,
well, it's not a new website, it's a messaging and visibility thing.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
a question of like putting out an offer, and it was a question of communicating clearly. It wasn't actually a question of like overhauling an entire website. And in that case, redoing the whole website was sort of a distraction. It was a way to stay away from other stuff that was more scary.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's plenty of scary stuff.
yeah. So,
We all have
I do a
things that
lot of
scare us.
hand holding. Sometimes I say that also, I like to say that I do action oriented business therapy.
Not a therapist,
I'm
but
not a therapist. I just play one on the internet.
there you
Um,
go.
because people come to me and they have a lot of feelings like we all do. Our businesses are babies, and even if we have other babies, and sometimes you need a place to process some things and think about things and decide like what parts are precious or not precious, and where are you holding yourself back. So,
Yeah, and I can say, because you once said this to me this year, somewhere this year, like I was in one of your programs. I've been in been in your program a couple different times, and your sprint program, and uh, you did a whole part of your sprint, which is about, we'll get to, but it's about an easier way to do social media, and you go through this whole process of helping people with their messaging, and you're like, Shannon, why are you in here?
yeah, I mean, because your job is writing stuff. So I was like,
I'm like all
Janet.
about messaging. Well, so why am I in here? And my answer was, one, because I love Kate, but the other two is that you got it. I didn't have to explain anything to you. I just could talk at you, and then you would know exactly how to process that and what I was thinking about, talking about. And you understood where I was coming from a branding standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And that's gold. It's
Thank you.
That's just goal. It's just being able to like sometimes just bounce it off of somebody who gets it, or
Yeah,
to be
it's
able to
hard to
ask
coach
that hard
yourself.
question.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
absolutely like it's very difficult to be your own coach. It's very I mean, I've heard somebody use the phrase you can't read your label from inside the jar. So,
I
it's
like that.
yeah, it's not my phrase. I'm not taking credit there. Like it's really hard sometimes to evaluate your own stuff. And, sometimes you need somebody else to kind of be like, okay, Shannon, cut the crap here. Like, which I think I do for people a lot of times. And that's why people come to me because they know like I'm not going to waste time. And I'm never
Mm-mm.
mean, but I'm also going to like ask them hard questions and be like, okay, no, really now. Like, let's get real here. What's happening? So,
Yeah, yeah. And that you're also able to listen with a discerning ear and translate what we are like rattling off
mhm.
into something concrete. Um, like we had a conversation and in a half an hour you did something just by listening to me talk that
Mhm.
would have taken me hours of both thinking time and actual work. And that is huge. One, it got done in a phone call and or a Zoom call, and it's just done. And now I didn't have to think about that piece. I could think about the next piece. And that's a
Package in
big
the mail,
deal.
Shannon. I don't know what to say.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot of value in that as an entrepreneur is have somebody to bounce things off of. And then
Yeah,
like
for
for
sure.
me, when I'm working with somebody, I'm doing a lot of asking of questions and listening and pulling out, helping them get information out of their head. How do we get content out of your head in the way that works best for you? And and you're doing the same thing only for the area of things that you specialize in. And I really appreciate having that available.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I do one of I do have clients in food and I do have some clients in crafts, but I'm not really niche down to that. I have a lot of people who come to me who are in coaching of various sorts or
mhm.
health stuff, fitness. I've worked with people kind of all over the place, like different sorts of people teaching programs and things like that. I have someone who's teaching English as a second language.
You've had a
Yeah.
few realtors. I know in the groups we've
Yes.
had some
Yes. Realtors. Yeah.
realtors.
Yeah.
We've had Jody who does veterinarian
A
holistic
holistic vet. Yeah.
holistic pet food supplements.
Mhm.
You know, trying to think yoga, I think might have been in your group at one point.
Yeah, some yoga, meditation, and Jin Shinjitsu, and yeah, also like Meryl, who's a personal trainer who runs an online fitness program actually made for entrepreneurs. It's pretty cool. So,
Oh, I'll have to get that link later. Let's have to look at that. Because we have different needs sometimes. We have,
yeah,
there's a lot of like plate spinning and scatteredness. And I know for me, like I can be really, really focused, or I can get kind of scattered,
yeah.
or a lot of scattered.
I
Yeah.
really like looking at other people's mess and taking it and sort of like giving it order and making it make sense. That's really fun for me. Like it's hard to do for yourself, but I really like doing that for other people and figuring out how somebody's brain works because we all work a little differently. So then it's like I have to figure out, okay, so what does Shannon actually need? Like, how does Shannon think about things and what's going to help her get a thing done? I like that kind of aspect to it of sort of understanding how somebody processes.
It's something that was interesting for me because I do a lot in the brain space and how do we think and how do we learn and how do we package an information in a way that best works for the audience and how do we get it out of your head in the best way that works for you.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I really loved is I have multiple brands, multiple projects. And so you put me into a worksheet to talk about branding because I couldn't nail it down right ahead. And you
Hmm.
popped me into a worksheet that you had for branding. And you just took me through the questions, and helped narrow me down. Like, what vibe was I looking for? What feel was I looking for? You had that all structured out. Um, and that goes to that visual communication background that you
Yeah,
have,
that's
and you
what my
bring that.
university degree was in. It was called communication design. It was actually an arts degree, but yeah, I think I actually, I really think people know more than they think they know. It's just they know it on a subconscious level. And so, um, if you look at like a company with a particular font and a particular color scheme, you get a feeling from that. Even if you're not a graphic designer, it still communicates something to you. And people are constantly reading signs like that all day long, from different brands, from different ways of communicating, and but they're not
Mhm.
necessarily like thinking about it. So it's making, the stuff that be more visible so you can make choices for your own brand, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes though, when we're trying to do it on our own, when we're managing all these other things in our worlds, I mean, I have a significant background in that, but if my head is over here, I can't make the leap or I can't get myself there um without like having that focus time, which I can't always carve out.
Hmm.
And um I know I'm not alone in that, that whole balls in the air, spinning plates, lots of stuff to focus on. Um, you know, to have somebody to be able to sit down with for half an hour to ask the pointed questions.
Hmm.
And almost it's a like a body doubling, co-working situation as well. It's just like and just get you through the decisions
Yeah.
rather than the churn and get out of that churn.
Yeah.
But you know, do you run into the same thing on your side? You're really great at helping people narrow it down, but do you get caught in your own churn?
I'm pretty good at pushing through it because, I mean, one of the great things about online businesses, and don't get me wrong, I am a perfectionist, but it's something I've learned to deal with a certain amount. Um, the great thing about working online is like I'm not building a storefront that has to look a certain way and spending tens of thousands of dollars on a sign. I'm not even printing business cards. If I want to change what my website looks like tomorrow, I can do that. I can change a couple colors and it's going to look different right away. Um,
Right.
so I try to get people, a lot of times, like people who get caught in perfectionism and like stuck in decision making, I'm like, just make a decision, just go, just do it. Because I mean, there are big decisions that are harder to walk back. Like you choose, okay, if I choose to have my website on this thing or that thing, that's a lot more complicated. If I decide I want to redo it over here, that's a lot more work. But once you choose where your website's going to be, for example, or you choose the class platform you're going to use, I can say like, that font's not working for me and I can change it. I've actually been going through a process of experimenting with fonts like on my social media account. Um, yeah, and I'm like playing with the typography and then I'm like, I think I'm sick of this one. And then I change it. And then as I was laying out my website last week, I was like, oh, I think that one I was using before still has a place here. So I brought it back in. So you're not, I mean, I like metaphors, so please forgive me. But
I love metaphors, so go for it.
okay. So I was working with a woman who had a background in ballet, and she said to me, with her background, you do it perfectly or you don't do it. Like you do it perfectly or you're not even on stage. So she was having a lot of trouble just like doing a thing. And so what I had to say to her at one point, I was like, you're not building a $10 million mansion. You're building a house out of Legos and you can take pieces off of it. You can add new pieces. We can rearrange the pieces. Like, this is not like a decision you have to live with for the rest of your life. So
Right.
I had to really like de-dramatize it for her. And then she was able to be like, okay, fine, and start to move forward from there.
Well, that tendency, I mean, there's certain some of us come from backgrounds where the messaging was got to make it right or
Yeah.
it's got to be perfect. And just as an element of scale, even if you put your website on a platform and then it turns out not to be the right platform or your email list on a platform and that's not the right one. Yes, it's a bigger task to move it to another than changing the font on your website.
Yeah.
Um, but in the scale of business, it's way easier than moving it from this location, physical location to that physical location,
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
it's just the scale business wise is completely different. I mean, it's very, very doable with the
Hmm.
right help. But, with the online business, we can make those shifts and pivots. Some are easy, some are, a little bit harder, but it's still all doable. And I know I have had to work through the whole idea of it's okay to iterate.
Hmm.
It's okay to make a decision and it be not the right decision and test and try and experiment and test and try and experiment, tweak and change. And it's okay to have it something out there versus nothing out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, I am a perfectionist and I was that like straight A student and like that kid who either did it well or didn't bother, and so this has been the work I've had to do as an adult business owner to change how I thought about that. And well, when I ran my magazine, actually, this woman who had been the editor in chief of a different magazine, um, we were having a conversation and she said to me, well, the good thing about magazines is you always get another issue. Well, you almost always get another issue. She's like, if you
Yeah.
had a concept and it didn't quite come out how you want, you can always try it again, like in a few months. You can always redo it. So, and it'll come out differently every time. You have another shot. So I think that I've carried that. I mean, I had to just for practical purposes while I was running my magazine. I had very limited staff. I had very limited money. I was the only person working full time on it. I couldn't obsess over everything. I had to get things done. I had to get things out. And sometimes it was, this is great. Wow, I really knocked it out of the park. And sometimes it was like, this is fine. This will do. This is how it came out. And I'm going to make the closest to a silk purse I can out of this sow's ear, and I'll do better next time. And I think that I've been able to carry that attitude forward into what I'm doing now and allow myself a certain amount of like experimentation and flexibility also to um figure out what I want to do. I actually after I left the magazine and it closed down, I like tried doing websites and I was like, oh, I hate this. I hate building websites for other people. I don't want to
That's
do this.
that's good data.
Yeah. And I was just like, no, this is not for me. So, and it allowed me to sort of play around, and I feel like I'm getting to a place where I love what I do. I love the people I'm working with, and I'm feeling a lot clearer in what my goals are and which direction I want to go. So, I wouldn't have gotten there by digging in my heels and saying, no, I'm doing websites. I said I'm doing websites. I have to keep doing websites. I would just be miserable, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, no. And that's a thing that sometimes when we are multi-passionate or have a huge skill set or we it's like which thing to do? Which
Yeah.
way do I go? Which thing to focus on? And sometimes we just have to try something and see how it feels and whether it fits. And maybe it doesn't fit for the season of life we're in. And so then what does fit for the season of life we're in?
Yeah.
And, some of my own entrepreneurial journey has been shifting because of seasons and raising kids and raising special needs kids. And you've been a single mom. You
Yeah.
know, the now that you're in a new season with a new college student, and which is different than when you're in the bulk of the high school years and you're, taxi mom, and which is different than when you got little ones, so
Mhm.
that's part of our journey, I think. But this season that you're in and what you're doing now to help other entrepreneurs, you're able to draw from all those experiences that you've already had.
Yeah.
Um, and just continue to go from there. But you also know those feelings that that come up, that why we get stuck.
Oh, absolutely. I've been processing some of those lately. Like, you know, uh, it's a good reality check when I have to process my own feelings around my business that I know other people come to me with, and I have to try to listen to my own advice. It's tough, but yeah.
Heard somebody turn it around periodically with, what would you tell yourself? Or what would you tell a client if they came to you with that kind
Yeah.
of thing? And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think fortunately I've had enough clients and dealt with enough situations at this point that I can think about what I did say to somebody, because I'm not very good at I'm much kinder to other people than I am to myself. So
I
I
think
find
that's
it a
true of
lot
a
more
lot of people, like most of us.
yeah.
Those niggles come up, the self-talk comes up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's my fidget toy. My daughter bought this huge box of fidget toys.
Oh, funny.
And then I came into my office one day and there were fidget toys all over my desk.
Oh, nice.
Apparently I had to pick them up without even noticing it sometimes. Um, so one of the things that you do is this program that is right now it's embedded in your sprint program, but the first time I saw it, I've seen it two or three times now, definitely two, maybe three. And that is what you call social media group therapy.
Yeah.
So can you explain what social media group therapy is from your side so that I get it right?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, first I'll say I run a program called 30-Day Sprint, which Shannon has been through. Um, and as I was building it and I was setting up structures for how people could deal with social media and content creation on a practical level, and I was going backward and I was going backward and I was going backward, like breaking down the steps. And then I got to a point where I was like, huh, what's not really addressed here is all the bad feelings people have about social media. Because I get texts all the time from my friends or, who are like, oh, why do I even bother? Oh my God, this is such a waste of time. Oh, I hate this. I have somebody who's being kind of mean to me right now, or whatever, like I worked
I
so
hate
hard on this
social media.
post. Nobody even liked it, that kind of thing. And so um I started to think about, well, I think I have to do a workshop about how we think and feel about social media. And I was like, oh, it needs to be like group therapy. We need to do therapy. And then I thought, oh gosh, is everybody going to think like, what the heck is she talking about? I thought, like, are people going to think this is really weird? And so the first time I ran it was November 2022. And I had really debated if it was going to be a live session or if it was going to be a recorded video. And I did it live the first time. And I asked everybody who was in the group, like, there were 8 people there. I said, was this worth doing live, or would you have rather had a recording of it? And they're like, no, live, absolutely. So we come together and we talk about some practical stuff, like how do you keep yourself from falling down the rabbit hole? Because I have some ADHD tendencies, even though I'm not formally diagnosed. I probably have ADHD. Um, and so it's like, what are the things that I've put in place to not fall down that rabbit hole? But also, what are the things I've put in place to not fall down the emotional rabbit hole? Um, because when I ran my magazine, I was a pretty visible person in the knitting world, and I would launch an issue and then people would be mean, honestly. Like, I mean, people would say nice things, of course, but like,
I mean, trolls exist and people say things on social that they would never say in real life. Like there's no
oh, of
filter
course, of
sometimes.
course. And then also, like, which voices stick in your head where you can't sleep at night and you wake up thinking about it? Who are you thinking about? Of course, you're thinking about the jerk who said something nasty,
And not
not
all the hundreds of good comments that you got as well.
exactly. I mean, and there are also people who think good things but don't say anything necessarily. So I started thinking about all of the things that I have done to really protect my time, my energy, my mental space, and I brought that all together to kick off. It is our first session in my program because I really think unless you can walk into the program having processed, like, or at least thought about some of these actual bad feelings, other than I hate social media, like I hear that one a lot, but like hate can mean a lot of things. Like, I hate it because I feel jealous. I hate it because I feel like I'm not good enough. I hate it because I don't get the response I want. I hate it because I think it's a time waster, that kind of thing. There's so many different ways people mean that. And so I thought, okay, well, we need to come together, process that stuff, think about it, try to come up with some solutions, hopefully change how we think about it a little bit so we can approach it differently and approach it with some curiosity and just enough distance where you can care about what you're doing, but you're not going to let it determine like your mood for the day, and you can get on with your life. So,
Well, it helps. Like I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
yeah.
Um, as someone who has worked from home for 20 plus years, it's a lifeline for me to stay in contact with people and to meet
Sure.
new people and just it just is. It's just necessary for me. Um, and build relationships through it. It's just awesome. But the other time, I'm also a massive introvert
Yep.
and it takes energy and time to create content and put things out there. And then depending on what your mood is, it's like, oh, people didn't respond, or oh, look at all these responses, and now I gotta go respond to everybody. Um, you know, that's real, but what I find interesting with your approach with the social media group therapy session is that one, it's a group of people. It's generally not recorded. Sometimes it is, but generally it's not recorded. So we can kind of be real
Yeah.
about we're not the only ones that feel this way.
Oh
We're not
no.
the
I
only
mean,
ones, and shine a light on this is a real thing that
mhm,
we are feeling, that
mhm,
other people are feeling, and then we get to decide, recognize that it's there, and then decide what we're going to do with it ourselves and learn some strategies of how to like reframe it. Because
yeah.
like sometimes we spend all this time thinking about what we're going to put on our social and forget that it has a lifespan of a blink. Um,
Yeah, depending
sometimes.
on the platform for sure. Yeah.
Um, so, sometimes there's certain things that you say in there that helps reframe
Hmm.
and is helpful to have that reframing. And it's like, am I really going to let this trigger me or not?
Yeah.
Am I going to let this overwhelm me? Am I going to, that's all useful, I
Yeah.
think. Or getting caught up in that. I hate this. I don't want to have to do this, but I have to do it. It's a necessary evil, and
Yeah.
just changing that because that energy is going to come through and we're going to procrastinate over it or
Yeah,
do
like you
other
either don't
things.
show up or you show up in kind of a negative way. People can feel it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So,
And I mean, it comes through in how we're phrasing things. I
sure.
mean, I caught something the other last week. I was like, hmm, I need to change my headspace. That's not the way I want that worded.
Yeah.
Why is it worded like that? That's not me. It
Hmm.
just happened to be how I was feeling in that moment when I created it. It was like,
Hmm.
yeah, thankfully there's a delete button
Yeah.
or an edit button.
Yeah. Totally.
right? So let's talk um in your 30-day sprint program, the other thing that's gold in there is you bring your massively impressive Excel and organization skills
Mhm.
um to this tool that you call a content loop. And and that's actually why I first started looking at your programs was because I saw a video of you doing the content loop as an illustration versus on the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she understands what's in my head and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Oh, cool.
Um, um, and I know you've gotten some feedback about that video about and some harassment about like how unprofessional the video looks, but for me, it sold me.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like sometimes it doesn't have to be perfect to get the
No,
message
I
across.
mean, honestly, the first time I ran the course, I was like, well, this might be the only time I run it. I don't know. And so yeah, my goal was to show up and to make the video, not so much to make it perfect. I mean, I think overall my stuff looks pretty nice, but
Yeah.
the I also I live in an apartment. The only white wall I had to work on is in my kitchen and is not very big. So, it's at a funny angle. I did what I could. Like I had to do it and move on, you know?
Yeah, and it worked. So ex so here's the problem that I see and hear, and what I think the content loop solves, and that I'd like you to talk to what a content loop is.
Okay.
So the problem that I hear people say, things that I've heard myself is, what do I post? I sit down and I write to do a post and I don't know what to say. Like I get ideas, but then when I sit down to do it, it's like it's gone, evaporates.
Yeah,
Um, there's the the feeling that you're always on this posting on social media hamster wheel and it's eating up
exactly.
time and energy and like always having to come up with new stuff.
Yeah.
And when you're an entrepreneur and a small business owner and you're running have kids or a family or whatever else you're doing, running nonprofits, um, in ministry, everybody I know like does it all.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
know how,
I
but
think a
like
lot of us do.
there's like then we have our causes and we have our businesses and we have our families and we're all very
Yeah.
passionate about all of it. Um, anyway, so there's the like overwhelm of like, how do we get past that? What do I write about? What do I post? How do I talk about my product? Whatever it ha- it's a fidget spinner. What do you do with it? How do you talk about it a zillion times? How do
Yeah.
you talk about pet food a zillion times? Um, in your process with a content loop, puts a stop to that, brings clarity to that. So let's talk about what, in your mind, a content loop is.
Well, in my program, it's 70 posts that you can use again and again. And that does not mean the exact same wording and the exact same text or the exact same image and everything's exactly the same. That does not have to mean that. It can, but it does not have to. It means we start with the messages we want to share.
Mhm.
And, you've done this with me. We get very clear on why we're doing what we're doing, who we're talking to, what the languages they're using. And then from there, we start to think about what we need to tell people and how. And we break that down. I have questions I ask you, you answer those questions, and then it takes those and it arranges them in a certain order to make 70 posts. And then we start building our posts. And the idea is you go through the 70 posts one time. And when you get back, let's say to 12 o'clock, so to speak, then you're going to have to go through them again. And this time you get to like change how it's presented, change the aspect you're talking about, change the wording you use, change it was a video before and now I'm going to do a still image, or I'm going to do a live, and or I talked about this aspect of why I do what I do and now I want to talk about this aspect. And um And what happens, I'm actually in the process of updating my toolkit, like my spreadsheet, which I call a toolkit that I make for each person, because as people are creating content, they start to say, oh, next time I'm going to do this. So they're already building their content for the next time through the loop. Or because I think once the juices start flowing,
Yeah.
then it's so much easier. You just have to get into that space. And yeah, so that's what the content loop is for. It's so that you don't have to work so hard each time you post, that you have a backlog of posts you can refer to, you can reuse. And also, part of my program is all about like systems. It's about batching, it's about
Auto-
processes.
Automating.
Yeah, automating things, doing things in a certain order, doing like things all at once. Like, for example, I'm going to give you another metaphor, if you forgive me. Like, if I told you that when I do my laundry, I put one shirt in the washer, I wash it, I take it out, I dry it, and I fold it and I put it away, and then I do the same thing with my jeans, you would tell me that I was out of my mind, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and you would say, Kate, put it all in the washer, put it all in the dryer, fold it all, put it all away, right? So,
Or at least break it into doable chunks that'll fit your time
yeah,
frame in your machine.
yeah. So,
Yes.
we do the laundry method for creating social media posts. We're not coming up with an idea, writing a post, making an image, posting it over and over and over again,
You
because
can, but
you can, sure, you can. And you know what the funny, excuse me, the funny thing is that for one of my clients, I caught myself doing that like a couple months ago because I was a little behind where I wanted to be and I needed to get some stuff up. So I was coming at like, I was like, okay, I'll do this. And I made it and then I posted it. And then I was like, oh my God, this is taking me so long. And I was like, oh, I'm not listening to myself. So yeah, we talk a lot about like monotasking and processes.
speaking of processes,
Hmm.
I hadn't even thought on that. But speaking of processes, this is your free downloadable, which each page of this is like its own little mini class. It's amazing. And it's a few pages. But at the end of it, you have this process,
Yes.
which is this is your content creation roadmap, is what you call this. And that process, I paid money to learn a version of that process, and you're giving it away for free, which is kind of cool. But this process is how to take a long form piece of content and break it down
Hmm.
into smaller pieces. And how many do you say in here? I don't know if you do, because this works for generalists. Like, how do you take a long form piece of content and break it down to 10 pieces or 20 pieces or 30 or 40 or more? And I've seen you do this with a book. I've seen a spreadsheet where you've done this with a book, where you've taken somebody's book and broken it down
Yeah.
into multiple pieces of I mean, a lot of pieces of content. Um, this process is one that we use at Little Bits Media to take a long form piece of content and repurpose it and repurpose it and repurpose it. So we're not having to start from scratch every single time. So
Yeah.
I love this. But on this page, there is this little thing. And when I downloaded this morning, you have this little tooltip there. And I clicked on it because I hadn't heard of the tool before. And I was like, I love you, Kate. You just saved me thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours. And that little tool is gold. I spent my time today figuring out how to use it and already used it on three different pieces of long form content in an hour. It was
Awesome.
awesome. It was awesome. I was so excited. It
Yeah.
was it was very, very cool. Um, so you have in here, I mean, this is a little sheet on Process Smart, um, and Repurpose Smart. This is gold. um, how to shoot smart, your shot list if you're doing photography at all,
Yeah.
um, and like what to do with and how to like do smarter even on your images, on your photography or your videos, which is all in this little free content creation roadmap, which is amazing. And I'll have the link on how to get that for free below the video. But that that process, that just being able to break it out visually
Hmm.
helps people with brains like mine, where like, or even the way you visually have laid this out, where there's lots of white space and bold headings and um so even if we've seen that some of this information before but couldn't process it, the way that you processed it, the way you've delivered it, um, like works for my brain, which doesn't like a lot, it likes pictures. It really likes pictures. I
Okay.
draw pictures. I like draw myself things. I scraggle things in corners, you know.
Yeah.
Speaking of, you know, a little ADHD,
Yeah, I
it's
had
just
to
how my
draw that
brain
out.
works.
I think it's in my recycling bin right here. I had to sit and draw it out for myself in order to like figure, is this it? Oh no, not quite. This is like an old version of it, but I had to like sit and make like a sort of map, and then what ended up being like the roadmap on the last page. I have the sheet someplace, and I drew it, and then I like had to turn it all around, and then I turned it around again, and I was like trying to figure out like, all right, how's this make sense? So
Right, right. And so that's what I do with like I can't start with a spreadsheet like you have for Sprint. You have the spreadsheet for your social media stuff. And so I
yeah.
start with your process and then I like draw it and then go through it. But yeah, I did this little email opportunities drawing for a client the other week, but it started all on paper, like with
Yeah.
drawings and
I
like
do a
mapping
lot
things
of,
out.
I'm a big believer in Sharpies. And I mean, I have this from our meeting the other day. Like, I'm always holding up a notebook to the screen with a Sharpie, like,
Yeah, that's
okay.
the umbrella, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm constantly scribbling things like that. I love my Sharpies.
Well, you know, yeah, for some people they just need to talk it out.
Yeah,
If their brain works that way, some people they just, and sometimes I just need to talk it out with somebody who gets it. Because if they don't get it, then I don't have enough oral power to explain it without my visuals. I need
yeah,
visuals to explain it. Um, some people are visual like me and they need that. Some people need to do and feel and touch and so forth, you
yeah.
know, and some people just need to read it. And that's their choice too. It's not actually, it's just how their brains work. And I
Yeah, I
think
mean, I'm
as
trying to give like a lot of options in my program. I mean, we have videos, we have stuff that's written out in the workbook, we have live sessions where we're talking. So, like, I try to give people a lot of options. And then if you're a person who learns by doing, you just kind of have to do what I say and then like
yeah.
and just go do it.
Well, and you know, I was in the middle of first sprint because I did your 30-day sprint and then I did your slow-mo sprint.
Hmm.
And which we're just finishing this week.
Yeah.
But I did I took a concept that you had showed in your 30-day sprint and I glommed onto it and I went, this will work for this other brand I have.
Okay.
And I took it to my VA and I said, this is what this is what I want. This is what I'm thinking. Can we make that happen? And we adapted it. And what we did is I do a lot of quotes. I like to share quotes.
Hmm.
And so we went through all my blog posts and pulled out quotes, little snippets, and then we turned that into a loop.
That I'm
And
actually doing that for myself right now. I'm
and
like, I went through some of the classes that I taught live, like the workshops I taught live, and I watched them and I listened. And then I was like, oh, I said something smart. I was like, I'm going to do a post about that. So I have a document going that on each page is just like black text on a white background for now, just saying what I want to say. And I'll go through them at some point and like pick out, the
Which
order.
ones you wanted? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we took we put them in a spreadsheet and uploaded them to Canva and did
Hmm.
a thing in a list in Canva and then downloaded them and then put them into Metrical on an auto list. So that's not all of our content, it's just twice a week do those go out.
Yeah.
But then I don't have to think about it anymore. And my
Yeah,
VA is
exactly.
freed up to do other things. And it's powerful to be able to just repurpose. And because not everybody that's even on your list sees your content the first time through.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, now I can just do that and I can produce more content and I can help more people and I can serve more people in under different brands. So
Yeah.
um
I mean, the good
and
thing
that
with my
came from an
clients is,
idea from your sprint.
yeah, I've had
Like,
to like put my own tools into practice in different ways because I have a client for whom I take a lot of pictures and a lot of videos. So I have to really think in advance about like what might I ever want,
right.
because it's food content and it's not just a question of like throw a cookie on a plate and take a picture of it. I have to make the whole cookie all over again, so that's hours of work.
Mhm.
And I live in a relatively small apartment. I don't have like my kitchen isn't nice for shooting, so I have to like set up a fake kitchen to work in. So it's a whole thing. So I really have to think ahead for them. And then I have a different client for whom they do all the photography. I don't touch it. I have to deal with what they give me. So I have to work a different way with them, but I'm able to sit down and create their content kind of all at once and then put it up. And then I work on other parts of the project for them. I don't have to think about, Instagram
Mhm.
every
Right, right. Well, I'm assuming that this shot list checklist that's included in your freebie is from that experience of having to set up shots.
Well, it's actually from running my magazine
Is
because
it?
we would be shooting like 36, hand knit like sweaters, hats, mittens, whatever. And you had to get the shot, you know. We would have to get shots of all the details. We'd have to get um, you know, everything you needed because you're not going to call the photographer and the model to go do it again. It's too expensive. So, yeah, so at first, the very first time I ran a shoot like that, I had like an actual spreadsheet with like the name of the item, exactly what was being worn with it, the jewelry, everything. Like the jewelry was in little sandwich bags hung on the hanger with that had the dress, like everything was super, super organized. And then eventually I got to the place where I was like, okay, this is what we need, dot, dot, dot. And I could do it without having to write that all out ahead of time. But yeah, I tried to create a framework for that shot list for people to be able to come up with their own checklist according to whatever it is that they're shooting to help them make sure that they get everything they need that's going to work for them.
So, when you have a physical product, like these are my cube timers, but I know I took that approach with whenever I get something new that I'm going to share about,
Mhm.
is I just take pictures from different angles from kind of thing, and then video, and
Yeah.
then choose from there because I also don't have like a really nice setup that can stay up permanently. And
Hmm.
I learned that from a food photography class that I took because I like food. Um, and we do taste tests. So, um, you know, but we were talking the other day about the idea of like if you are not working with a physical product and you're talking about messages
Yeah.
and sharing your messages, how you can batch reels or short form content or even video content so that it's not something like you have to do every week, but you can or even regularly, you can just batch it in whatever you have energy for and
Yeah,
just change your shirt or, you know, change your hair, pull your hair up, do some down, do some up, whatever it is that you do. Um,
yeah, I've done sessions with that, with like that. I've done like half VIP days with people where we come up with all the messages and then we go through and I say, okay, talk about this thing. And they talk and I take the video and then I'm like, okay, I skip down the list a while. I say, talk about this thing. And they're like, no, I don't feel like it. And it's, okay, let's go to the next one. And then they like change their shirt or they change their hair or whatever. And that way you end up with a lot of video and you can create it all at once without everything looking exactly the same. Because the problem actually is, like, depending how often you're putting up videos, if they all look exactly the same, if I always see you look exactly like this and I scroll past, I might think it's the same video I've already seen. So you have
right.
to at least give some kind of cue that something else is going on, whether that be graphically or with your clothes or your hair, or, stick your glasses on your head,
Mhm.
where you're standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that tool that you shared in your handout, that's one thing that just like saved me a zillion times because I have a lot of long form content and I
Mhm.
do interviews with private clients, my ghostwriting clients, and it's just an easy, way faster, lightning years faster way to easily repurpose those into shorts.
Yeah.
It's just like easy and for a relatively low cost. And that was one of the reasons why I was so excited is because, that's just another way is, you can get on an interview with somebody
Hmm.
and or a conversation or a training and repurpose some of that very quickly with the right tool.
Yeah.
And that's crazy exciting. I mean, just crazy exciting for particularly for an entrepreneur who, doesn't have a big budget and is bootstrapping it, or a small business owner that doesn't have a lot of time to sit there and figure out video editing and how do I work with CapCut? How do I do this and how do I do
Yeah.
that? Something that frees up our time so we can spend more time doing the things we love.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It
mean,
makes a difference to me.
yeah, totally.
There's-
I mean, when you have the right tools, or you can, figure out ways to make things go faster or make them go further by repurposing them, that definitely makes like a huge, huge difference.
Right. 'Cause especially when like you 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 don't have to always be creating new content.
No, you don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. I mean, really, if I'm talking to people who might be interested in me, like, they're entrepreneurs, they have too much to do. I'm going to tell them like something helpful. I'm going to tell them what I'm up to. It's pretty clear what I need to tell them, and sometimes that's going to repeat because not everybody is going to see every single post I make. So, or you take the same idea and you present it a different way because, like we were talking about, people process different ways, people learn different ways, and then on top of that, what is it, like you have to hear something like 7 times or something? I don't even
Oh,
remember.
it's even
It's
more now.
like 12
Yeah,
or something. I don't
it's
remember how many.
yeah. Yeah, I geek out on this stuff, so I won't go there because that's a whole other thing. But yeah, you have to hear a message repeatedly and often in different ways.
Yeah.
Um, there's lots of science there. Um, and it is not the same stats and data as it was pre short form content.
Yeah, don't we have a attention span shorter than goldfish now?
I don't know.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. I
I
don't
don't know
know.
what the attention span of goldfish is, but we uh, we are inundated with messages, and we have internally learned to block them off.
Yeah.
Just blinders, we just don't see things that are right in front of us because we're constantly being bombarded
Yeah.
with information. So how do we, as small business owners, show up for people who are literally needing and wanting and praying for what we have that
Yeah.
solves their problem in a way that, you know, works for us and our bandwidth
Well,
and
I
for
think that's
them.
part of why in my messaging workshop, I'm always like, say less. like, like, make it really simple. What's the one thing you have to tell them? Okay, tell them that. Like,
And some of us need to hear that
yeah,
a lot,
yeah.
more than
Yeah,
not.
I'm not the person who generally needs to hear that. I'm usually like, I should probably say a little more. But some of us write entire dissertations in our Instagram posts until we run out of characters. So
Yeah. So anyway, we should probably wrap it up here. Kate can be found at kategilbert.com, and I'll have the links down below. Kate, do you have one more tip that you want to give anybody, or uh,
Mm, okay,
piece of
well,
advice?
I sort of said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Like, my biggest tip that I think helps in so many different ways is like to approach your work and social media like a scientist. This is a lab. You show up, you do an experiment. When the experiment doesn't go how you want, you don't take it personally. You look at the results and you say, oh, it seems like this. This is my new hypothesis. I'm going to test this. And then you move forward with that hypothesis and you see, you go from there. And I think if you can approach your work, especially social media work, in that kind of way, like with some curiosity and without your results necessarily meaning something about yourself as a
Yeah,
person,
not a
then
reflection on you.
nope, nope. Like, what the algorithm's gonna algorithm, and it's not personal. So if you can approach it scientifically, if you can approach it with curiosity, then I think you can um, make more progress and also feel better about what you're doing.
I have your voice in my head on the algorithm's gonna algorithm. I love that. Anyway, thank you so much, Kay. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
you
having
joining
me.
us. So much gold nuggets, so many gold nuggets. See, I'm a writer, I can't talk. Anyway,